You think you know the women of the Bible. Eve, Mary, Ruth, maybe Esther. That's the whole list most people carry around in their head. Here's the problem. That list is wrong. Not fake, just badly incomplete. The Bible names over 100 women across both Testaments. Some of them get a full chapter of their own story. Some get one single line, buried in a genealogy. Some get almost nothing at all, just a name and a moment. But the ones history almost erased did something remarkable. Sisters who walked up to Moses and rewrote the entire inheritance law. Midwives who lied straight to a king's face and saved the nation of infants. A prophetess, a reigning king, trusted more than his own priests. A businesswoman who funded a movement and hosted the first church in Europe. By the end of this video, you'll know their names. You'll know exactly what they did and exactly why they got quietly left out of the story you grew up hearing in church. Here's a question most people never think to ask. Why did 5 sisters walk straight up to Moses and demand their legal rights, in a culture where women rarely owned property and almost never confronted their leaders directly? Most people assume women in the Bible had no voice, no land, and no real power over their own lives. That assumption is flat out wrong. Today we're clearing that up, plain and simple, with the actual text in front of us. No church jargon, no confusing theology, and no skipping the hard parts. Just the real story, straight from the passage itself. Stick around because a few of these names deserve far more credit than Sunday school ever gave them. Our anchor passage for today is Numbers chapter 27. The book of Numbers covers Israel's 40 long years wandering through the harsh desert wilderness after leaving generations of slavery in Egypt. This particular scene happens near the very end of that long journey. The people are camped just outside the Promised Land, waiting for the order to finally cross in. Moses is old now, and he's finishing the laws that will run their brand new nation. Jewish and Christian tradition both credit Moses as the author of this book. He wrote it for the Israelites, the generation about to enter Canaan for the first time. Most scholars place these actual events somewhere in the 1400s BC, give or take a century. Keep that setting in your head. It matters a lot for what happens next. Meet the daughters of Zelophehad: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. 5 sisters, 0 brothers between them. Their father died out in the wilderness and left no son behind him. Under the inheritance law at the time, that detail mattered enormously. Land and property passed through sons, and only through sons. No son in the family meant no land for that family, period. Their father's name and his whole family line would simply vanish from the tribe forever. So instead of quietly accepting that outcome and losing everything their father had worked for, the sisters did something almost nobody in their position ever dared to do. They walked together to the entrance of the tabernacle, the literal center of Israel's entire camp. They stood in front of Moses, the high priest, every tribal leader, and the whole gathered assembly of Israel. Numbers 27,004 records their exact words, spoken out loud in front of everyone. Why should the name of our father be done away from among his family, because he hath no son? Give unto us therefore a possession among the brethren of our father. Go back and read that line again slowly. They didn't whisper this request to a friend. They asked it in public, in front of every single leader in the nation, with 0 legal guarantee it would work. That took a kind of nerve most people never managed to find in their entire lives. Moses genuinely didn't have an answer ready for them. So he did the wisest thing available to him and brought the case straight to God instead of guessing at an answer. Numbers 27,006 and 7 record exactly what God said back. The daughters of Zelophehad speak right. Thou shalt surely give them a possession of an inheritance among their father's brethren. Notice what God did not do here. He didn't just grant a quiet, one-time exception for these 5 specific sisters. He rewrote the law for the entire nation, permanently, on the spot. From that day forward, daughters could legally inherit whenever a family had no son. One respectful, public request from 5 ordinary women. We wrote the inheritance code of all Israel. That's not a footnote buried inside a boring genealogy chapter. That's a real legal revolution, started by 5 people with technically 0 legal standing to demand anything. Here's what this story actually teaches you underneath all the history. Courage paired with a clear, specific task can move something that looks completely permanent. These sisters didn't sit around waiting for someone to give them permission to speak up first. They didn't assume the existing rules could never possibly change for people like them. They simply showed up together, stated their case plainly, and let the outcome follow from there. Think honestly about the last time you noticed something unfair and chose to stay quiet instead. Maybe that was at work, maybe inside your own family, maybe scrolling past it online and closing the app instead. Silence almost never fixes an unfair system all by itself, no matter how long you wait. A clear, respectful, specific public request sometimes does exactly that, faster than you'd expect. This isn't just dusty ancient history sitting in a museum somewhere. It's a working pattern you can actually use again this week if you need it. Notice the problem clearly, name it out loud, and bring it directly to the person who actually has the power to fix it. That's the entire formula. The daughters of Zelophehad, 3,000 years before you were born. Now let's go after the bigger myth hiding underneath all of this. The idea that women throughout the Bible were mostly silent background characters. Meet Shiphrah and Puah, two Hebrew midwives introduced in Exodus chapter 1. Pharaoh personally ordered them to kill every single baby boy the moment he was born. They refused outright, and then lied confidently straight to his face about the reason why. Exodus 1020 says plainly that God dealt well with them because of that choice. Meet Deborah, a judge who ended up leading the entire nation of Israel in Judges chapter 4, settling disputes under a palm tree between battles. An army general named Barak refused to march into battle unless Deborah went with him onto the actual battlefield. Meet Huldah, a prophetess, a reigning king, consulted over his own official priests when a forgotten scroll of the law was discovered in 2 Kings chapter 22. Meet Jael, who ended a violent war with nothing but a tent peg, also in Judges chapter 4. Meet Rahab, who hid a pair of Israelite spies inside her own home and helped bring down the walls of Jericho as a result. Meet Tamar, who cleverly outmaneuvered her own father-in-law to secure her family's entire future after being wronged twice over. None of these women are minor footnotes tucked into the margins. They simply received fewer verses than the men standing right next to them in the same story. Fewer verses on a page never once meant less impact on the actual history. The erasing didn't stop the moment the Old Testament ended. Flip forward into the New Testament, and honestly, the exact same pattern repeats itself. Meet Anna, an elderly prophetess who recognized the infant Jesus inside the temple in Luke chapter 2. Meet Lydia, a successful businesswoman who ran her own trade and hosted the first church in Europe in Acts chapter 16. Meet Phoebe, named directly as a deacon in Romans chapter 16, trusted to personally carry Paul's letter across the sea and likely explain it in person. Meet Junia, described as outstanding among the apostles in that very same chapter of Romans. Meet the group of women who quietly funded Jesus' entire traveling ministry with their own money, named directly in Luke chapter 8. Meet Priscilla, who personally taught a gifted preacher named Apollos the finer points of the faith in Acts chapter 18. Later scribes and translators sometimes softened a few of these names over the centuries. Junia occasionally got turned into a man in certain translations, simply because a female apostle felt unexpected to the people copying the text. That's not the original scripture erasing these women. That's centuries of ordinary humans quietly doing the erasing on scripture's behalf instead. There's one more detail almost everyone skims right past. Open Matthew chapter 1, the very first page of the New Testament. It's a genealogy, a long list of fathers and sons stretching back generations. Ancient genealogies almost never bothered naming any women at all. This one names 4, and clearly on purpose. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and the wife of Uriah, better known as Bathsheba. Every single one of them carries a complicated, even scandalous backstory. Matthew could have skipped every one of those names and honestly nobody would have blinked. Instead, he placed them right there in the opening lines of the entire gospel. That's not a careless accident, that's a deliberate statement, placed at the very start of the gospel on purpose. The exact women history tried hardest to erase are standing directly inside the family line of Jesus himself. You might honestly be wondering why these stories got shorter treatment in the first place. It's almost never because the original writers thought women mattered less than men. Ancient historical writing in general focused heavily on kings, armies, and land, and most of those specific roles simply went to men at the time. Women still show up constantly, right at the exact moments the text considers essential to the story. A midwife's quiet defiance, a sister's public legal challenge, a deacon carrying a letter across an entire empire on foot. You might also wonder whether any of this should change how you personally read the rest of the Bible. Honestly, it should. So read slower than you normally would, and stop skimming past the names. Watch closely for the names that show up exactly once and then quietly vanish from the page. Ask yourself why they're mentioned there at all, because the text rarely wastes a name for no reason at all. So here's the whole answer to today's question, in plain, simple terms. 5 sisters ask one hard question out loud in public, and the law of an entire nation changed because of it. Women across both testaments acted with real courage in moments most readers skip right past without noticing. They got quietly erased from popular memory, not because their stories were genuinely small. They got erased because nobody kept actively retelling those stories, generation after generation. That stops today, starting with you. Go read Numbers chapter 27 yourself sometime this week. It genuinely takes about 5 minutes. Then sit with one honest question. Whose story have you personally stopped telling? Drop your answer down in the comments below. I actually read every one of them. Subscribe for next week when we cover the one woman who out-argued a king and completely won.